Alright, in this one I want to talk about why it's generally low IQ to not use hair loss drugs as a male. So, assuming you're an adult, of course, assuming you're 18 and over, you can either decide to be low IQ like Otis or high IQ like Chat Cafe. Here's a study I want to talk about. This was a 5-year multinational study. And if you look at the methodology, it's actually a randomized controlled trial. But they took over 1,500 men with male pattern baldness, so androgenic alopecia, and they were randomized for 1 milligram of finasteride a day or placebo. Over 1,200 men continued up to 1 year. And then they had the 1-year period multiple times. They had a control group. So it was a randomized control trial, which is one of the best types of data. They assessed the hair counts, the subjective assessment, and the objective one by the investigators. They took pictures of before and afters. They had multiple methods of basically tracking the hair loss progression. And like I mentioned, this is a randomized controlled trial. And for those of you who don't know, a randomized controlled trial basically neutralizes the confounding variables because the two groups, the control group and the intervention group, they're randomized. And so the confounders of the placebo group are the same as the intervention group. It's not that there are no confounding variables, just that the confounding variables are equal. So they neutralize each other. And this is why this is the gold standard in the scientific literature, is because it's as if there were no confounding variables. Because like I said, the two groups have the same confounding variables, therefore they neutralize each other. And then they compare the outcomes of the control group versus the intervention group. So like I mentioned, this is at the top of the pyramid when it comes to evidence power. If you want to minimize the risk of bias and you want to have as high quality of evidence as possible, this is the best you can get. The only exception is systematic revision meta-analysis of those types of studies. And yeah, there's nothing that beats it when it comes to the methodology of study that can have. And like I said, multiple years, randomized controlled trial, and here are the results. The finasteride group, they had remarkable improvements, and they assessed a p-value of below 0.001, which means the probability that the results are true is 99.9%. So it wasn't by error. And on one hand, you had the 5-AR inhibitor group that basically had improved hair loss over the 5-year period of the study. And then you have the control group, which didn't block their 5-alpha reductase enzyme. And that group, they saw increased progression of hair loss. So two groups, one of them took the medication, hair loss improved over 5 years. The other group, hair loss worsened. And the side effects, almost none. Almost 0%. So let's talk about the risk to reward ratio, because that's how you assess if something is safe, if something is worth it, etc. So the probability that if you take a 5-AR inhibitor that you're going to see decreased hair loss and increased hair density is 90 to 100% probability over the long term. So chances are it's going to improve your hair. What about the negative side effects? Well, compared to placebo, because you have to discount the percentage from the placebo group, the probability that you, for example, will see negative side effects that aren't nocebo effects from 5-AR blockers are basically 1 to 4%. In a lot of studies, it's less than 1%. So almost zero in terms of probability of having negative side effects. Meanwhile, the probability of having positive side effects is almost 100%. So you can see the risk to reward ratio is insane when it comes to these drugs. And that's the entire point. That's why I talk about them. Certain drugs, for example, SSRIs, they have negative side effects in up to 50% of participants. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about the numbers. But certain drugs, they have much higher rates of side effects, of negative side effects, that is. But 5-AR inhibitors, they just aren't one of them. So the risk to reward ratio for the average man is insane, hence the title of the video. So it can be a balding coper like these guys, or it can be a Chad with a full head of hair like these guys. So yeah, I think the choice is pretty easy. If I had to choose, I would definitely choose to be one of these guys. They definitely mogged the other guys to death. And yeah, I mean, there's no contest. There's no competition. These guys mog the other ones to death, obviously. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think for the average male, it's pretty low IQ to not use 5-AR inhibitors. Of course, there are exceptions. There's like 1 or 2 or 3% of men that do see negative side effects after discounting for the placebo group, but that's the exception, not the rule. And the rule is the risk to reward ratio is completely worth it for the vast majority of men. And if you want to join my Skool community, which is full of things that are based on the hierarchy of evidence so that you can save your time and you don't have to spend countless hours researching like I did. I talk about how I got rid of acne. I talk about how I got an aesthetic physique. I talk about how I reach top 1% of health and reach over 100% of all the micronutrients every single day, and how I get around 800 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone, which is well above average. If you want to see those things, link in the pinned comment and you can join my Skool community.